Hello and welcome. I'm just going to, do you know what? I'm going to dive into the intro of Do More With Less while we wait for everybody just to get themselves seated and with coffee and arrived. My name's Mark Schwakey. 10 years ago, much of B2B marketing was flush with cash. Budgets were generous and flexible, risk-taking was somewhat rewarded, and growth at all costs was the playbook. Now the game has changed and we're all being asked to do more with less. Now that means fewer people, it means tighter budgets, it means higher expectations. So my normal question for these episodes of Do More With Less is, how do we actually make that work? That's a mathematical equation that doesn't stack up. Do more with less. Is it still possible to be bold, to create work that stands out and that matters? Today's question, though, is more of a pressing issue. One of the key issues of our time, I would say, is in this era of do more with less, is that mathematical equation that we are failing to address properly is likely to be a factor in more and more of us failing to hold on to our jobs, more of us failing to find good, satisfying marketing work. Welcome to Do More With Less, a podcast series with me, Mark Schwakey, author of B2B bestseller Boring to Brave. Each episode I talk, and I am genuinely talking, to B2B marketing's top leaders on the still emerging aspects of a Do More With Less playbook. I'm absolutely over the moon to be sitting today with Richard O'Connor, who is Chief Executive Officer at Propolis, the global community for B2B marketing leaders, as well as events and training organization B2B Marketing. Richard, welcome. I'm going to come to your story background as we speak. I've also here got Michelle McCann, PhD, advisor at Collingwood, but genuinely one of marketing's great leaders and public speakers with more than 20 years experience at some of the genuine B2B giants of our time. We're talking LexisNexis, Thomson Reuters, CACI, and a regular speaker and presenter on marketing transformation in times of disruption. So welcome to both of you. I'm genuinely delighted to have you both here.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, you two know each other. You're actually former colleagues, so this could be quite fun, right? Where you worked together at Estates Gazette, is that correct?
We did.
Right.
A lot of fun.
So, Richard,
I ran sales and customer success, and Michelle ran marketing.
Amazing. Great. Okay, so brilliant. Sales versus marketing. Amazing. Let's start. Richard, I was at B2B Ignite in July with, in fact, all three of us were, with Do More With Less, and saw you take to the stage to kick that conference off with your challenge to us all to adopt your commercial marketer campaign agenda. What's this about for you?
I mean, this is a mission. I mean, the first thing to say, I suppose, is that this isn't our agenda. This is, and it's not our subjective opinion. I mean, one of the great privileges of running a business like B2B Marketing is that we're talking to B2B marketers all the time. And the commercial marketer framework, mission, if you like, has come from all of those conversations, thousands of hours of conversations with B2B marketing leaders, their teams. And we have just seen a big acceleration in the need for marketers to have more commercial impact. Now, you could argue we've been talking about that for 20 years, but I think this is about recognizing the dynamics of the business world we live in now, economic volatility this year in particular, changing buyer behavior, AI, a decline in B2B sales effectiveness, and it's about making sure that B2B marketers are now match fit for the next 5 years. And I guess to do that, there's got to be a bit of honesty about where we are, because too many, not every, but too many marketing organizations have become the promotions department and project managers of the tech stack. And there's no capacity left. It's not about a lack of desire. There's no capacity left to be connected to business strategy, to be having regular conversations with the CFO, to be close to the market and not getting market insight from customers indirectly from sales or customer success or the people who are speaking to them all the time. It's that there's a deep need for this. And I guess the paradox of all of this is all of the dynamics that we described, the buyer behavior, AI, economic volatility, is a golden opportunity for marketing to actually step in and be that central department for growth, because who is going to do it if marketing don't? Who is going to... Go on, Mark.
Well, so actually, I was going to ask you about how it has been received, because when you stood up at the conference, you almost, to me, it felt like a very powerful rallying cry. And I saw lots of nodding. And I think the challenge you set for the industry was remarked upon throughout the day in sessions. But then later, I did hear one or two people indulge in grumbling at the very idea that as marketers, we're not already commercial, right? And I kind of get that, because I've been in B2B marketing as long as you guys have, and I've heard these same rallying cries, if you like, for all these. But from my point of view, it's only adding hard value to talk about how to bring more marketing more closely into the center of the business. We did at Orbital X, we did a ridiculously relevant podcast, I felt, last month on how not to get sacked as a CMO, how not to get fired, and we had three voices on there, and I thought it was a really, really valuable conversation, and I suppose that the thing that you've got to sort of balance is both the why now, which you've addressed, volatility, crazy economy, fear and caution, AI, all of these things, but also kind of we're still not there.
It's a really good challenge, and I understand why people might have seen this as a bit of a slight, but I without wanting to be rude, I think they've misunderstood the point. The point here is that if you are already got a place on the board, you're already seen as not a cost center, but an investment and central, indispensable to long-term growth. Well done. That's amazing. You're already got the commercial skills. Carry on. You don't need us. You're doing it. You're the inspiration for the rest of the industry, but you are in a minority, because unfortunately, more marketers and marketing departments, through no fault of their own, just through dynamics, industry dynamics, changing nature, all the dynamics that we've talked about, are not in that situation. They are a cost to be trimmed. They are the first budget that is looked at when things get tougher. So, it's amazing. I don't think there's a single marketer out there, B2B marketer out there, who doesn't recognize, and never has been, doesn't recognize, particularly in B2B, doesn't recognize that their role is commercial success and growth. But through a set of things that have happened beyond their control over the last 10 years, they've lost that. They've become more promotions, more ceding responsibility to a tech stack which drives MQLs, become a bit, I'm afraid, slaves to the MQL, which is a horribly reductive metric. And what we're saying is that you've got to break free from that. You need the skills of the core marketing, of brand, of campaigns, of increasing the ABM, but you need this layer on top, which is influence, credibility, language the business understands, to be future fit. If you're doing it already, absolutely brilliant. Well done. Love to see it. Help us get others up to that level.
So let's come back to what the commercial marketer agenda is later in the conversation. I believe there is all sorts of training and self-assessment tools and kind of frameworks if you are available, if you're a member of the Propolis community. But coming over to you, Michelle, if you agree with where Richard's summation of marketing in the industry is, I suppose the obvious question becomes, Richard's talked about being a slave to the MQL and a slave to the tech and a slave to the sort of the kind of assumption that we at best can be promotions. In an era of do more with less, where they're looking at us to drive MQLs to a greater extent, and they don't want to hear about any of this other stuff, this influence, this growth, this investment, this center of commercial activity. How are we to make that shift when they're already sort of cutting their cloth to measure as far as marketing is concerned? It's going to be a tough ask, right?
It is. I mean, what I would say is, I think that I know we're going to talk about the definition of a commercial marketer in a little bit, but I think maybe the way to answer your question, and I don't think it's in a soundbite, I think there's an uncomfortable truth about what's happening in board level meetings right now, which is, rarely marketing leaders want to admit it, and I think we're all seeing it, and it's right in your face. And that's that budget. When budget cuts come, it's marketing first. And it's always been this way. It's just much more uncomfortable. This is my opinion. It's much more uncomfortable now. And what I think makes people uncomfortable, some, about the definition of a commercial marketer and the talk about commercial marketing, is because that unfortunate, uncomfortable truth is right here in the present moment, in this cultural moment. And I think that also that brings me to kind of a boardroom moment to try to answer your question. If you are, to Rich's point, if you're under pressure in a PE-backed or founder-led firm, and you're in that quarterly board meeting, and the CFO asks how, for example, marketing contributed to the great $2 million deal of the quarter, and you're the CMO and you're finding yourself talking about email open rates and LinkedIn engagement, you're stuffed. I mean, that is not the only way in which you're going to demonstrate that you're adding value. So it turns into a conversation that needs to be had, a deeper conversation about metrics versus how you're measuring value and where that growth is going to come from. So, I'd say that, one thing I would try to define it as possibly is maybe, you could call this cultural moment, the great marketing, bifurcation, is that the tension that's being brought up by commercial marketing in this conversation is that maybe you're going to have a division between, as sophisticated commercial marketers who are able to master revenue attribution and demonstrate all those operations, versus the people who are stuck still doing lead generation and awareness metrics, and that's it. So it has to be a combination of both. This is a more sophisticated conversation than it's ever been before.
Michelle, the points you've made are all absolutely, I totally agree with. But what happens in a conversation about being more commercial? What happens to the vital, for me anyway, planning for longer term growth and investing in brand? Because those are any marketer worth his or her salt has that at the back of their minds to balance out. But that doesn't feel to me to have a very comfortable position of influence or status in a conversation about being more commercial.
Well, I suppose maybe one way to engage with this is, one of the first points of the definition of a commercial marketer is to think business objectives first and marketing tactics second. And maybe I'll give an example. I was speaking to someone last week whose background is in mergers and acquisitions, and we were talking about the state of marketing and how difficult and the challenges that are available, or challenges we're all facing right now, cuts to budgets, do more with less. And she said, well, how do you answer the question of how you would do more with less? And in so many words, was almost the exact conversation. And I said, well, hold on. One of the ways you could answer this is demonstrating marketing's value to the organization. Let me show you. I'll show you the metrics, but let's look at brand awareness. Let's look at the whole picture. And she picked me up on it and said, and I thought, well, how could I have possibly answered this wrong? She said, no, see, the way I'm hearing it, and my background's in mergers and acquisitions, she says, the way I'm hearing this is it's all about marketing, and you're not communicating in this a way that it's about the business. And I thought, and this is a friendly conversation. And I was thinking, maybe, unfortunately or fortunately, this is an opportunity to sort of look at this in a way of how we can communicate differently. Of course, this is, the typical marketing people, how can I control it and still manage it differently?
Yeah.
But perhaps with the commercial marketing piece of what Rich has put forward and, from the market, like he says, this isn't his agenda. This is coming from the market, is that we all do possibly need to be much more mindful about what that fundamental shift is to be more financial and talk about business objectives first. I don't know. I pose the question to you.
Well, I'm interested in finding out how this conversation about the commercial marketer. I mean, we promoted this webinar on can we extend B2B marketing's half-life just by becoming more commercial. I wonder if we can somehow tangibly tie it back to do more with less, just for now, just for a moment, on a more tactical level as opposed to a strategic level? So, Richard, for example, is it about like how do we tie it back? Is it about balancing out a closer alignment with sales and go to market, or and that skill set? Is it about convincing a CFO, by being more commercial, convincing a CFO to stretch more out of a budget that at first seemed small, but now I have to trust maybe they're going to let go of some purse strings? What is the tie back to doing more with less? If somebody's jumped on this podcast right now because we promised answers to the do more with less conundrum, what is the commercial marketer agenda able to do for them?
Well, two things. One, let's just talk about the CFO just for 2 seconds. I know we don't want to dwell on the CFO. There's a couple of points.
I do.
Okay, there's a couple of points on this, right? CFOs are not anti-marketing. They are pro-growth. And it is the responsibility of a marketing function to demonstrate clearly the path for growth. And let's just talk for a second, but also just on the CFO before I move off that, there is this thing about this is marketing's responsibility. The reason we talk about marketers becoming more commercial marketers, because that's who our audience is, that's who we influence. But there's a huge responsibility for CEOs and CFOs to understand more about how marketing work, how they drive long-term demand, and how the role of brand and creativity and some of those slightly less easy to measure intangible things that marketing do are absolutely more important than they've ever been. We are certainly not saying that there is a trade-off between being more commercial and doing things like brand creativity. Quite the opposite. This is about building the case for them, building the muscle to be able to enter the boardroom and make the case for those things. So, but there is a responsibility of CEOs and CFOs, and we increasingly want to communicate to that audience to understand marketing. So there's a meeting in the middle. Let's take the PE example, right? And I would, massive generalization, but there's good PE and bad PE. Good PE, well, let's start with bad PE. Bad PE come in, strip assets, cut costs, try and drive short-term margin, flip the business, move on. Good PE, long-term PE, come in, they have a deep understanding of data, they analyze the business, they look at what is working, they shoot sacred cows that don't work, that might have been in place for 5-6 years, because that's what happens in organizations. You carry on and do the same thing. And they build an engine for growth of doing more of what works and less of what doesn't. And it's really quite a simple thing. And then once you've got that engine working, there is investment. So the do more with less pieces, I think it's do better with less. It's cut the crap out, cut the waste, cut the stuff that you may have done for the last 5 to 10 years, but clearly isn't working, or you don't even know it doesn't work because you haven't got the analytical skills or the data to be able to demonstrate whether it does or doesn't work. That's what good PE does really well. They don't have any emotional connection to what's gone before. They strip it all back. They strip it down to bare bones, and they do more of what works, and then they invest. That is what a CFO would do. You demonstrate what is working. A CFO is going to be your best friend, not your enemy in the organization.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, as far as what the end goal is for any given business, founder-led, PE-backed, is I've had lots of conversations over the past 18 months, 24 months with these exact type of businesses who want kind of a magic answer for marketing. You know, it's like, give me the answer, fix my marketing organization kind of in a soundbite, or have a look at it and tell me what's wrong with it. And I think that it's, as picking up on a few themes there that Rich mentioned, it's thinking short term. You know, it's thinking short term and not long term investment. And if you look at long term investment and you're in a business that has an exit strategy, for example, you could go to sell, and I've seen this happen, that they go to sell and the acquiring company says, well, you know what? You haven't made the necessary investment in the marketing function. We're going to have to build that up. Maybe that knocks the cost off your business of the purchase. So there's some short-term thinking and there's some long-term thinking, but that one is maybe, as Rich says, you know, for CFOs and CEOs to look at what that strategy is, what infrastructure's in place. And maybe another point of doing more with less is looking at your existing organization and saying, where am I going to get that extra value in? With budgets being cut, sales can only make so many sales. There's only so much you can do. What is that magic nugget? Well, if you're in a PE-backed business and you're under pressure, serious pressure to make sure that you hit those growth targets, if the one lever you're not pulling is that investment in marketing that could rocket you, that's where the extra value comes from. And I think that anybody we're all in a very competitive market right now. Anyone not doing that and they want a magic answer, that's the magic answer. Invest in marketing long term and you'll see the results.
I think that's, sorry, Matt, I was going to say, I think you could do a lot worse than, and it's, again, a massive generalization and around PE, but I think you could do a lot worse than thinking like good PE and taking a really hard look at the business and what's working and what isn't. Because I think if you do start thinking like that, marketers might build more credibility by that introspection and being honest about the things that may not be working, even if they're what people like to do.
I believe in the responsibility thing that you talked about earlier. And I think the responsibility is on both sides. So even with good PE, okay, think about a new sales team and against a new marketing team, okay? What are the differences in onboarding new salespeople to when you're onboarding a new marketer, okay? It's absolutely business, almost universal business practice that a new salesperson comes on and has 6 months to ramp up with gently incremental targets, right? You don't have to win over anyone just now. You've got all sorts of great onboarding with product knowledge and use case knowledge and customer interviews and sitting in on other people's pitches and starting to get together with the product marketers to build the deck of your choice, and you get all this great time. A marketer comes in and in month one, figures and results and impact is being looked at by people. They might very well be, she's only just started, give her time. But those results are being looked at. You're expected to start delivering something by day and week one, okay? That's number one. Number two, in the businesses I've worked for, sales training is an ongoing, universally understood and accepted, ongoing, powerful, outside speakers, 2 days away. I've never been part of a business in B2B where marketing training was taken so seriously. If marketing training was had, it was me having to go and not even ask for, not argue, but just take the money for training my people to be better. Whether that's through B2B marketing, your organization, Rich, or whether it's through, I've put my entire team on a number of occasions through Mark Ritson's mini MBA, certainly because it's a massive and powerful refresher. Certainly because there's stuff in there that most B2B marketers that fell into it don't know, but also just to give these young people the confidence to answer the questions they're being asked in really, really tough meetings, right? I just want them to feel like they know what they're doing and to answer the questions. I don't see marketing training being given. So even with good PE, when you say they come in and they strip the stuff that isn't working, I would like them to acknowledge that sometimes the stuff they see isn't working is actually working, but they can't see it.
Fair.
On the other side, I think since we started this do more with less conversation with the market in February, March or April, we have had hundreds of conversations with marketers, and I would go both good and bad. And the good ones understand what it is to take responsibility. The good ones understand the power of getting about the business and the organization and asking questions that in the past have had very little to do with marketing. In past jobs, I've been in those companies where the chief marketer is expected to meet the CFO one-on-one kind of once a year at budget time. And that's it. And that's shit. That's absolutely shocking.
Agreed.
We're going to spend your money and you're going to give us one answer once a year and we're not going to meet again till next September, October. Are you serious? Is that real? So I've been encouraging marketers to think about questions that wouldn't come into their daily remit, but look a little more curiously and say, listen, I've spoken to the salespeople, and I've spoken to the product people, and I've spoken to the sort of client renewal guys. And I know that we are, on average, our average basket, our average order is like 55 grand. It feels to me like we had a lot of value, and we've got all these extra bits and bobs. If we could make that 65 grand in the next 3 months and find a really, really good case for doing so, we wouldn't need all these top of funnel. We wouldn't need to be fighting so hard to get all these MQLs that we're going to argue whether they're valid and effective or real or not. Like, if we could do some work on establishing a premium value or a premium offer or premium brand, is it not right that we could do half our year by, and if you went and asked the CFO that, the CFO is going to go, sorry, what? Did you just ask me a sensible question in finance? Is this a prank? Yeah, sure, come in, let me talk you through it. I've actually got that modeling and it would be great. Why can you do that? If you learn the power of a question in your organization and set yourself about and get into meetings that you weren't invited to and be part of ask people what is going on from your end. What is behind your current activity trying to reduce a 9-month sales cycle to 6 months? Because if we could do that, again, we've probably done our year. We're safe. We've got another. So I think these are questions nobody's expecting marketing to ask. And when we talk about the responsibility on both sides, that's what I want from my do more with less marketers. When people are coming to our events and tuning into this podcast and giving me the great advice, the great tips, the great practice that they've seen, that's what I'm hearing. I'm seeing that the difference between good and bad marketers is the bad marketers are still trying to do great marketing tactics of yesteryear and then wonder why they're getting hit over the head. Whereas the really, really good marketers are learning to be more like go-to marketers, more like business folk. And 20 years I've hated this boardroom, speak the language of the boardroom thing, and it's only on us and blah, blah, blah. I've understood it, I've accepted it, I've practiced it, I've tried to be good at it. But it's always felt to me like it's a bit one-sided. Like surely they could meet us halfway and understand real marketing. By asking proper business questions, I think we become... we become better business people, but secondly, I think we start being able to do more with less. Not just because you're trusted more and you're potentially given more, but because it takes fewer arguments to get what you need in order to do the job.
I would agree with that. This is about being efficient with time and surprising people in the right way. And that point around being in meetings because that you've not been in before because you're asking the right question, I think is absolutely right. And the language you're describing is exactly what we would see as how a commercial marketer would operate. I'm taking the time to be curious about what matters to you and my role in delivering that.
Because what else is marketing? Without that curiosity of what matters to everybody else in the organization, what the hell else is marketing? If you want it just to be promotions and your big campaign, brilliant. But you aren't gonna have anything to do less with unless you are curious about what matters to the rest of the business. Nobody, it almost stands to reason that nobody's going to listen to you.
The only thing I would add to that is in small, and I agree with that. And I think as senior leaders and between the three of us, having worked at a variety of different organizations, in a big organization, sometimes that's a little bit easier to have that conversation. In smaller organizations that have always done things the same way, there's people who have different types of challenges, and maybe some advice for them at this juncture is that some of what they aren't doing is there's going to have to be a combination of whatever they see it fit of the awareness metrics, but demonstrating what that and getting agreement of what good looks like, of how marketing is measured within a given organization. And I just refer back to different people, founders, PE-backed businesses, board level members, that when you ask them, I don't, and this frustrates everyone in marketing. And this is not a new conversation. How is marketing measured in your organization? Just don't know if we're really doing well. Okay. how is marketing measured in your organization? Not really sure. And I mean, that's the CEO. That's one of our founders. And you just think what's great about having that conversation with someone like that is to say, well, don't you think that would be the first place to start? How are you measuring marketing? What does value look like? And what do you expect from them? If you have to be their champion, you have to start with being their champion, but that's also where you're going to get that extra value for your organization. And I think that anybody who's listening, who's maybe finds themselves in that situation, to you guys' point, they can ask those kind of questions, but to start to try to look for some more answers. Find that dashboard, get agreement on that dashboard. Is this what good looks like? Maybe they're just at that very basic stage. And shockingly, there's a lot of organizations who are at that stage right now. And that, I would say, is trying to do more with less, because it's what you don't have. If you can pull those metrics together, I hate to say it's the old-fashioned way and you do it by hand, but to at least get agreement on what that measurement looks like, and then say, look, if we get that investment, we can see how we're adding value. So a lot of people are at that stage still right now. Okay.
So listen, let me move this on a bit. We've talked about this in theory, albeit with, and again, I'm two of the big minds of B2B marketing today. So not to be sniffed at, but let's go to specifics. Richard, talk me through, if you would, the program, the commercial marketer opportunity for those that are embracing it through the Propolis community, right? So talk me through what happens to them, what is on offer, and also specifically any stories you can pull off from out of your cuff about the response that you've had, or the opportunity, or the success stories, or somebody coming to you and saying, I didn't know this, or this has helped. Like, what's been the net result? So talk me through the program and then some of the individual stories.
Well, the way for a start, there's a lot we give away for free, because as an organization, as B2B Marketing, as Propolis, we just believe that this is it's a crusade for the profession, and there is an expectation, and we feel we have a duty to get this message out and help B2B marketers. But, at the same time, we are a commercial organization. So there are elements of this that are part of a Propolis membership. And as part of it, if you become a Propolis member, and this isn't me pitching, you've asked me the question, so I'm going to give you the answer. We do a comprehensive diagnostic on core B2B marketing skills, but also the skills of the commercial marketer. So market insight, analytical thinking, strategic thinking, financial acumen, agile decision-making. They're the 6 that we have identified, plus a little bit about leader capability, self-efficacy, cognitive skills, and communication and influence. So we work on understanding the current state, and then we have a combination of things that we would do to tailor a program according to the needs of the leader and the team. And that's a combination of our Propolis experts, including people you've had on the show recently, like Shane Redding, like Scott Stockwell, Georgia Gilmore, Robert Norum, Barbara Stewart, on a range of commercial skills, all of whom have been marketing professionals, practitioners, been in client-side marketers. We have training, we have frameworks, we have models, we have events, peer-to-peer learning, and we have Propolis, the hub, where you can talk to other people who are in similar size organizations, similar organizations to you. And then we will evaluate.
Does everybody get their own commercial marketer score?
Yeah, every team gets their own kind of commercial marketer radar graph, if you like, on where the strengths and development areas are. And then we plug the program to help develop those skills, in conjunction with the leader of that organization.
And how long is the program? How is it?
It's typically a year long. It's typically a 12-month subscription. And during that period, as I say, it's a combination of things. We're not a learning management system. We're a hands-on, practical, expert-led program. Yeah.
And what are users saying about it?
I mean, the theme, where I started, this is what we're hearing. This is what we're being told. This is what we're being told is needed. So it's born out of demand from our customers, from who are, large global enterprise organizations, some SMEs, but typically large organizations who are struggling in these areas and recognize the need to develop these competencies and skills. We have had significant success. We've had, without, I can't break any confidences, but we have had people who've been through the program and who are starting to go through the program who have successfully gone and made the case for more budget. So do more with more, or even do less with more. I'm not quite sure that works, but yes, who've successfully, gone on and made the case and elevated their status in the organization. So yeah, it is absolutely, it's landing as a concept. It's working as a program.
So that is the outcome that ties it back in, not just the theme of this podcast, but to the thing that we want, which is elevating the status of marketing in the organization. And again, I don't know about you guys, but I have not, there are certain rules you kind of set yourself as a marketing leader when you embrace a new team and start working with new people. And you kind of, I wonder if we can sort of unearth a few examples or very quick tactics or strategies or kind of ground rules for operations and practice. That, like, for example, I never ever let anybody on my team go and pitch a new campaign without a forecast, without a financial forecast. And the question is always, well, hang on, boss, I've got no idea what this is. I mean, in MQLs or money? In money, I want to know what it's going to make in incremental revenue. And they say, well, how on earth do you do that? And they say, well, you forecast. And they say, how do I forecast? And I say, you stick your finger in the air and you give them a sensible estimate. And if you come in short, then the next time you do something similar, you cut your cloth. And if you come in on budget, they're going to expect you to get 10% more the next year. And you keep optimizing and fighting throughout the campaign until you start seeing the results. Like, you get into the habit of setting yourself a target. And they say, but hang on, if I miss my forecast, what happens to me? And I say, salespeople miss their forecasts all the time. Like, I've been in a position in a business where we've reforecast our eventual annual revenue target 4 times in a year. Like, it's not, it's all sensible estimates, guesswork. But unless you are in the room being able to say, we are aiming for this to bring in 350K incremental or whatever it might be, nobody's going to listen to you. It's just a load of activities. What else have you got in your sort of experience and toolkits that sort of somebody could jump on right now and go, look, I'll let me look at this commercial marketer program, but for now, for tomorrow, I want to see myself as a more commercial marketer. What are some of the tricks of the trade, Michelle, that, for example, you would insist on your team practicing or embracing?
Yeah, I think to further your point and everything that you've just said, because I agree with that and have encouraged teams to do that, is empowering them to think like an entrepreneur. You own your own business. That can mean, and that threatens other departments. So let's keep that aside, is to tell your marketing team, look, you're in charge of that sector. You're in charge of legal, for example, that's your sector. Be an entrepreneur of that sector. How much do you think you should do? How much do you think you could do? What are other ways you'd like to do it? You own it. It's your business. And when you empower people to think like that, then they start to. And they start.
You see their eyes open, don't you? Because as B2B marketing, we've never been drilled to that. We've had these MQL targets. I've asked I've invited, and one or two have taken it up, but I've invited my senior marketers on my teams to join me in putting a revenue number by my name and saying, look, if you want, I can sort it out so that part of your remuneration is tied to the performance of the business. And if you want sort of 10, 15 or 20% of your remuneration as a first stab tied to the performance of the business, it means that you might be able to over-earn. And so all of these things are available to marketers in order to make them understand the conversations that are going on around business performance. And it's never been put on a plate for us. It's never been offered. It doesn't seem to, marketing seems to be the only one of a go-to-market or revenue operation that doesn't seem to have that pressure put upon it until redundancy time. And I like my marketers to lean into that and see if they can get something out of it.
I agree. I think people are afraid. I think if they haven't done it before, people are naturally scared to come up with a number because, and what I usually try to encourage always actually is don't be afraid of it, because at least then we have a benchmark. Then we know where we start,
Yeah.
So you pick, okay, we have to do 50% increase. Okay, well, it was 5. All right. Well, now we know where our benchmark is, our activities were, and how much more and it also makes it realistic. I think that there's nothing, I think that to your point about what people can do now, they can ask these questions right now and try not to be afraid, have some courage, put it out there, create your own benchmarks. People ask for, there's a lot of conversations about what's the industry benchmarks. And I'll be contentious. I think people want to hear unique solutions for their unique business. And I think that benchmarks overall don't necessarily work in terms of social media. What's a good number? What does that look like? But within your own business, the one thing that you can control and the one thing that will be true is understanding what your actual benchmark is based on your own performance and start from there. That's an honest conversation. I think it's having really honest conversations is where the growth is going to be found.
And by the way, it leads to better practice, because what tends to happen when you ask your marketers in a safe way, you set a safety net around them and say, listen, this is on me, it's not on you, but let's get into the habit of seeing where you think this campaign could go. If you ask them for a number and you say, right, well, that's brilliant, let's see if we can hit that number. What it leads to inevitably is that people's focus go as heavily into post-campaign execution as pre. They love all the planning and the creative and the story and the setup. But often what happens is they'll do it and throw it at the market and then almost start planning the next thing while hoping sales will jump on it. Whereas if you have a number and you've said 50 and you're starting to come in at 5, it really narrows the focus to, oh shit, what do we need to do to that campaign now? So do we need to level it? Do we need to optimize it? Do we need to ABM the hell out of it? Do we need, what are we going to, how much more can we rinse out of it,
Yeah. Because people, it's, there's a lot of environments that people work in that say, it's okay to fail. It's okay.
Nah. Well, it is.
Right. So you can.
It is, but it's not when you have to tell your wife for the 8th time that you've been made redundant. You can't just say, but also, Dabs, don't worry, because failing is just part of the learning. So it's like, yeah, but yeah. And I think that that's where that ability to empower people to say, it's okay to look at where we're performing, because once you know where you're performing, you can have a conversation about growth and value drivers. You can have a conversation about what further investment could happen. It isn't just about year on year, month on month performance. It's about, again, short and long-term gain. And one really basic one that we haven't talked about is about competition and about what your competitors are doing. So if you're a business that is what a lot of businesses are doing right now is not backfilling, for example, not redundancies, but people have left and they're not replacing them. Yeah.
And everybody's rushing to try to have AI solve all their problems, which AI products that are happening right now are some of them are amazing and it's a great investment, but it isn't going to solve all your problems. But looking for where you are, I can't say it enough, looking for where you're performing right now. See what your competitors are doing. If you're not investing enough in marketing, wouldn't that be an obvious place to pull that lever and see that accelerated growth? Because everybody's looking for double-digit growth every year on year, no matter what the market's like. And especially, again, we're back to PE-backed businesses. There's a no excuse, no, we cannot fail mentality. So where are you going to get that extra value? If I'm in a competitive market, and I'm not investing in marketing, that seems an obvious place to start to look to where you're going to get that growth from.
I'd add a couple, Mark. Customers. When making sure that the marketing teams are talking directly to customers, not on sales ride-alongs, not espousing changes in buyer behavior as an abstract concept, actually talking to customers themselves to hear firsthand what they're going through, their customers, because otherwise marketing is one step removed from reality and is an interpretation of what you think is going on rather than based on empirical research. I think why sales are in a powerful position, and rightly, is because they are talking directly to customers. So they can go to the senior leadership and say, well, this is what we're hearing from customers. Marketing need to do the same. They come at it from a different lens. They're not trying to sell anything. They're trying to understand. And I think understanding your end markets, your buyers in real terms, provides enormous power and enormous influence, because it's coming through the prism of wanting to serve them genuinely and understand their needs. And I don't think marketing does enough of that. I think they are.
I've been part of marketing teams that have never, outside of doing a case study or an event, have never met a customer. And I think when you talk about marketing as being the voice of the customer, and in B2B marketing, I'd say 75-80% of us don't give ourselves the requirement to meet customers. I think when I spoke to some of the big experts for writing the book in 2020, I think that was one of the key parts. I think Annabelle Venner of Hiscox said, I don't know why this happens, but I think it's just because many B2B marketers don't use their imagination to see the route to forming their own relationships with marketers. Client owns the relationship and sales owns the relationship, and we just do the bits in between. And it's almost like, just pick your favorite customer and give them a call and say, hey, can I take you to lunch? Literally, it's as simple as that. And start forming your own customer advisory panel to give you the ammunition to breathe life into these conversations.
It's a self-limiting belief, and I think there are loads of those in marketing. The other one is this is from Georgie Gilmore, who's our one of our experts, and she runs part of the curriculum for the commercial marketer. Is invite finance to regular meetings. Bring them in, get them to do lunch and learns. We've just done that with our CFO, who's just done a finance basics for our marketing team, and the sales team, and the customer success team. And it went down an absolute storm, because when decisions are made then on investment or cuts or profitable growth, and this is a great one from Tim Shercliffe from IFG, Inflection Group, who talked about it recently. Marketers talking about profitable growth is absolutely key. There are a number of businesses, I've worked for one, where actually at a gross margin level, this product looked really good, but when you actually add in all the indirect costs, this was not making any money, and it happened for years. So understanding that you can be making money on the face of it, but in reality you're not, and understanding those drivers, and then marketing understanding what profitable growth actually means, I think that's a very powerful position to be in. But it requires a fundamental understanding of how finance operates and how P&L works.
Look, I think that we have we are at time, and we're running over. But I've really benefited from this conversation. I really hope that our listeners have as well. I think there is if you set our conversation against the backdrop that things have got tougher but better for marketing. Tougher because we are in a massive fix. Like, if you were able to sort of, to some extent, breeze through quite easily, doing the same old for many years, that doesn't exist anymore. We are all under far more scrutiny, and we're still in every given day having to learn and develop brand new skills outside of marketing to be of any serious value. So we talked about being, sales teams do not have to be best friends with marketing teams. They don't. They just need to make their money. They don't care. Salespeople don't care about anything other than making sure they meet their quota and get their bonuses. So if they have to blame you for things gone wrong, they will. It's us to make friends with sales. It's us to make friends with clients. It's us to make friends with the CFO, and not just understand and learn, but show our value. It's kind of depressing that we're talking about this similar topics for the last 20 years, but actually with the rabid excitements around AI and the caution around the economy and having to justify more and more the level of our influence, I actually think there is superlative case for the why now piece that you talked about earlier, Richard. I think that unless you are now a commercial marketer with a full understanding of everybody else's needs, incentives, motives in the business, you really don't have much chance. And with some of some of the best people in marketing around the world recently having told me they're struggling to find or hold down work in a recruitment market that doesn't seem to know whether it's coming or going, I think it is on all of us to do it well, and to enable what is being imposed upon us in a do more with less culture. So again, I want to thank very, very deeply from the bottom of my heart for your time. Michelle, Richard, thank you for joining us. This has been Do More with Less. Thank you for your insight.
Pleasure.
Thank you.